All right, let's take a look at Bootstrap and in particular the grid system, right? So the grid system, the grid system is a is more or less what we just saw earlier, right? That we were building these columns, right, ourselves, and we set using float. We would use float. We would declare that certain divs we would make their width a little smaller, yes, and then we floated them so that they would stack horizontally as opposed to stacking vertically, yes. It's pretty much what you were able to do with just a plain table, right? You would create a table and you would have columns, and then you would have your content inside of the column, yes. But since we already said that's a bad use of tables, instead, what we're going to introduce what's called a grid system, right? A grid system as opposed to calling it a table system. So basically, what we're going to do is we're going to try and achieve the same behavior that we could achieve using tables, but using divs and classes. So no tables. Instead, we're going to use divs and classes that are going to achieve the same behavior. We're going to have divs that can be declared as rows, and we're going to have divs that can be declared as columns. Yes, right. And these classes behind the scenes are using the technique we just showed you, right? Using float, using the width, 33%, 50%, or whatnot. Yes. Okay. So that's what the grid system is, and they're going to have classes such as column, COL, right? Column, 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 column. In addition to that, the grid system, other than allowing us to break up the page into rows and columns, it also knows that something that might look great, where you split up a really big page into 6 columns, right? Because you have a huge monitor, right? And 6 columns fit nicely. When you start making that screen smaller, maybe 6 columns is not a great idea. Imagine trying to fit 6 columns in a tiny little phone screen. Yes, right? It would look, it would be unreadable. So what the grid system does is that it declares different versions of these columns. Right? It says, well, I'm going to declare columns that would only apply, right, if you have a small screen, or I have column styling that only applies if you have a big screen, right? So what you could do is that you could say, well, I have, in a large screen, I would say, okay, well, I want you to lay out in 6 columns, but on a small screen, I allow you to lay out as just a single column, right? And I can just scroll through the whole content. But anywhere in between, I can say, well, 6 columns when it's big, 4 columns when it's medium, 2 columns when it's small, and 1 column when it's extra small. Make sense? Right? And what Bootstrap does is it declares different versions of the columns, and then you can apply these classes and tag your content with these classes so that it behaves that way. So you'd say, well, how big you want me to be? Well, in a big screen, I want you to be 1/6 of the entire width. But in the medium, I want you to be 1/4, and in small screen, I want you to be 1/2, and in a small screen and a really really tiny screen, I want you to be 100%. Make sense? Right? So that's what these styles, these classes do. They have gone and surveyed the average screen size of various mobile devices, right? And they have determined that these are nice breaks, right, of pixel in mobile phones, right? And it says, well, I'm going to target the styling for large. I'm going to consider large screen anything that is above 1170 pixels, right? And in between, anywhere between 970 and 1170, this is where the column medium, the medium styling is going to apply, right? And anywhere between 750 and 970, that's what I'm going to consider small screen. Yes.
So you don't write in these class prefixes? Like
You write the prefixes, but they're tied to these screen sizes.
so if you had a div and then you put the column medium,
Yeah.
do you, so how does it? What would it behave then on like a small device if it had the column medium tab? Would
Uh,
it automatically like pull that as well? Or?
Yeah, no. So the content would be the same, right? But the layout would be different. So anywhere below 750, this class would kick in, right? And what it would do the standard thing would be that it would make the size of the content 100% and take up the entire width, right? Now, how do they trigger? That's the trick, right? Let's see how the logic, right? You would say, oh, wait a minute, is there some code that is executing and checking the size and triggering the behaviors? Yes, there is, right? Not yours, but there's a browser code that does that.
I guess my question is, why would you put a prefix in if it automatically does it by the screen size? Like, why would you?
Oh no, only when you put the prefixes do they kick in.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we'll show you in a minute an example. Um, so it looks like there's some logic here that says, well, should I apply this styling or should I apply that other styling? Yes, like maybe JavaScript, but not JavaScript. Actually, there's what are called media queries. So media queries, it's not a new technology. It's been around from the very beginning when the web pages came out, and it allowed you to say to apply different styling to the same web page depending on the media where you were displaying the page, right? If you were displaying the web page on a monitor, then the styling could be lots of colors and background and movies and all sorts of things, lots of advertisement and whatnot. But if instead you were printing it, right, and maybe it was a black and white printer, right, it would make no sense to have all this coloring and background and foreground and whatnot. Yes, so we needed a mechanism that allow us to target different media, right, and say, well, this is a style sheet, right, and these are the rules that you're going to use when we're targeting this media, and these are the rules when you're applying some other media. Okay, so what Bootstrap and all these libraries have done, they have hijacked this behavior that's been around for a long time, and they've used it to their advantage. It says, now I can establish rules and say, hey, if the width is between these sizes, then apply all these rules, right? All this CSS over here, right? So in here you would see column small or column large or column whatever, right? Declared over here. And the ones that for medium, right, you would have declared here, and the large ones, for instance, declared over here, right? And you can establish what those limits are when they break, right? And as you move, right, either these apply or these apply or these apply, right? And so they control the size, the styling of the screen based on these screen sizes. All right, so let's play around with some of these. All right, let's play around with some of these classes. But here's an example of using these classes. Um, one of the standards that they've established is what does it mean to be small, right? What does it mean to be large, right? And what they've done is that they've gone to the printing industry and says, well, how do you typically break out content on a page, right? On a large page, and the printing media usually follows a standard of breaking up the content typically in 12 equal sizes, right? In 12 equal columns. So if you read a newspaper, you'll find that usually you have really tiny columns, something that's twice as big, but they're all broken up into these 1/12ths, right, being the smallest of one of these columns, right? And together they add up to the entire width of the page. Make sense? So this has been working very well in the printing industry, and many of these libraries have copied the same idea, right? They're going to break up the page into 12 equal portions, right? And that they can all add up to all the way to the entire width. So here's for instance, here's the prefix column medium, which we know what that means, right? It's only going to target certain sizes of screen. And then what do you want to display? How big do you want me to be? Well, here I want you to be 1/12 the entire width of the page, right? Like we did earlier, right? We did 50%, we did 33%, right? Whatever 1/12 is, whatever percentage that is. Right? So that would be the percentage of these, right? And you can stack them. You can stack them horizontally by putting all the contents, right, and tagging them as column one, column one, column one. Or you can break it up in any which way. You can say, well, I'm going to say 8 and 4, right, or equal parts, 4, 4, and 4, as long as they all add up to 12, right, and or 50-50, 6 and 6. See that, right? Now, when would these rules apply? Only when the screen is in the medium size, right? Between, I don't know, 750 and 12 something, I forget, right? If I would use a different one, column large, meaning that styling, I'm going to be 112 only above 1200. Okay. Here I'm going to be, the width is going to be 112 only between 1200 and 750, right? And if I say small, then it would be between 750 and I forget, right? And if I say extra small, then it'll be whatever down to really really tiny screens. Okay? So we can play around with these. Here's an example of using all 12 elements, right? Class row would be the wrapper, and then internally will be all the different columns, right? Here we have some other rows. Notice that they wrote this, they implemented it to look very very similar to what you would implement if you were using tables instead. Yes, we want the behaviors of tables, but not actually use tables, right? So the classes are row, right? The row is a container that contains all the rows and also adds vertical spacing, right? Where everything inside all these columns, they stack up horizontally. So rows add vertical spacing, whereas the columns can manage the spacing horizontally. Make sense, right? Yeah. So let's see. So define breakpoints. Here's a split view, right, where you have a row and a left-hand side and a right-hand side. Okay. When you don't specify the target size, you're leaving it up to Bootstrap. So you're leaving that decision to Bootstrap on whether to just apply the large screen or medium screen. Right. So let's play around with it. Let's see. Let's go here and let's add a file here that we can play around with Bootstrap. Let's see. Well, in the assignment, we ask you to implement a left-hand side, right-hand side, right, in the editor, the page editor, right, where the left-hand side you have you can select different modules. So let's do that. Let's and we're going to save that, and this will be course editor. That template. Well, I'm just going to call HTML now because I need to link to it, and that make it very very inconvenient. So course editor. And I'm going to link it from the index. So course, where did I put it? It's at the root, right? Yeah, course editor. Okay, so we have the course editor. And in the course editor, we're going to need to load the CSS library. And the CSS library, we need to go fetch it. I'm gonna look for a CDN that I can link. Let's see. So we can say so Bootstrap CDN. There we go. And I'm just going to copy here, Bootstrap. And I'm going to go back to here. No, that's not it. And I'm going to link it. I'm going to say link, just smaller. And this will be href, point to that URL. And this is a style sheet. Okay. Let's save that. And if we refresh, notice that immediately it looks different, right? It changes the font. So that tells us that this is actually working. We're going to wrap this with a container because this is the top level of our page. So this will be class and container. So this is one of them. We refresh. So notice that it adds some padding, right? Without the container, it was kind of flush with the left-hand side. It looked odd. Also, if we make it tiny, notice that it's kind of center, right? Notice that it adds a margin on the left. It also adds some margin on the right-hand side. And as it becomes smaller, notice that it kind of steps forward. See that there's a break point there between the when it becomes, see that? So it becomes smaller and smaller and smaller until there's no more space, right? And then it just becomes targeting phones. 100. Notice it just becomes 100%. I like to use container fluid, which doesn't add these margins on the left-hand side. I just prefer that container. If I do fluid and I refresh, notice that it does not add the margin on the left-hand side. See that? Okay, so the style, I like that styling better. But either one is fine. All right, so I'd like to be able to do is create a row. My O is broken. And here we can have a div class column, and we can split left-hand side, right-hand side. But I did want to show you where you might have here a column medium 4, right? And this might be column 1. We have column 1 there, and let's have just a couple of columns. Column 2, column 3, and column 4. And it's not kicking in. What am I missing? Is it 4? Did I spell it right? There we go. So okay, so we have 4 columns. Am I spelling it wrong? Where's Bootstrap? Bootstrap. Get Bootstrap. It is. Oh, I went ahead. I can't add. Thank you. So this I meant 3, 3, 3, 3, and 3. There we go. Okay, thank you. And so notice that it splits up into equal parts, or you can break it up into a split view, like you're asked to do in the assignment, where you have a row, and you might have a left-hand side. So this is div class column 3 on the left-hand side, and so this would be left, and this would be column 9, and this would be the right-hand side, right? Where you have a left and a right. Okay. Obviously, I don't have enough space here or content to illustrate that, but notice that this right-hand side is taking up the same width as these 2, 3, and 4, right? Taking up that same width, right? So other things that you're asked to accomplish here is where my slide go? Here we go. Present. Is create a navigational elements where you can use the left-hand side, display a whole bunch of content that you can navigate between different modules, right? And on the right-hand side, you have maybe several lessons that are displayed as tabs, or display different topics, and different widgets display underneath as pills. So all those navigational styling are all available on Bootstrap, and the intent of this week is to become familiar with using all those styling using Bootstrap and just plain old HTML. So let's explore some of those things that you can do in Bootstrap. So if you look for navigation, you have here nav bars, you have tabs, you have pills, you have cards as well, grids with headers and main content, and so you're asked to use some of these same elements, right, in your own assignments. So let's take a look at one of them here, lists. Lists, where are you? There we go. Here are the lists. So list groups allow us to display content in a list instead of using bullets, right? You can use entire div, and you can then style whether something is highlighted, different fonts, different colors, different borders. So let's take a look at that. Notice that it uses this this template, just plain all UL, right? That you would expect, and LI, but you style it by providing the class that is specific to that rendering. You can also use active to highlight a particular element. Let's play around with that. So for instance, on the left-hand side, you can use things such as that LI I just showed you, right? So let's do a UL. And here you might have different modules. So the modules might be, so this week we're looking at HTML, we're looking at CSS. Actually, no, that's a module. So this is then we'll look at single page applications. Then we'll look at server. Then we'll look at database. So these might be different modules, right, that we're going to be looking at over the next couple of weeks, right, on the left-hand side. And that's the default styling. And the default styling is pretty ugly. We can style it by saying that we want this to be a list group, right? And these LIs, let's make this a little bit on the left-hand side so that you can follow along. And this would be class, list group item. So let's copy that and apply to each one of these LIs. Right, it renders now as a nice a list on the left-hand side. Okay, we can highlight one of these by adding an additional class. So we can say active, right, and it highlights it as being the currently active item. Okay. Obviously, what's going to happen here is that we're going to add JavaScript. Excuse me. We're going to add JavaScript so that as you click on different elements, right, it'll navigate to different places. It'll highlight the right line item. Okay. On the right-hand side, we might have on this right-hand side we might have tabs, right? For tabs, again, I would encourage you to become familiar with how to style these things using Bootstrap. So let's look at tabs. So tabs, again, it uses the same UL that we just used for rendering the list. Right? You would use the same UL, but you style it by applying different classes, and now it renders instead of top down, vertically. It renders now horizontally, right, as tabs. But it's the same layout, right? The same content, ULs and LIs. So we can copy some of these just to get started. Right. So on the right-hand side, you can put in a couple of these ULs, right, and we can render it on the right-hand side. There they are. You have the tabs. Right, so we can make that a little bigger. Okay. This is showing you a couple of stylings where you can disable a tab. Right. You can enable a tab. Well, these are all enabled, right? But one in particular is being active, right? The currently selected tab. And the way we achieve that is look at the UL, right? So notice we have the parent UL. Right, that declares this as a nav and nav tab. These are classes that were declared by Bootstrap. And then you have the line items, the line items, declaring that each one of these line items are nav items, and then inside you have these links, right? These hyperlinks that are declared as nav links. Your nav link, nav link, nav link, and one in particular has the active class associated with it, which is currently highlighting, right, and adding the border and removing the bottom border. See that, right? And that styling is being added by all these classes. So what we're asking you to do, right, for this particular assignment is to become familiar, right, of how to use HTML combination with classes, right, to achieve these kinds of layout, right. One more, right, we want to use pills. Pills. So again, there's tons of badges and whatnot that you can add small little text around it. You can make it small. I guess these are not pills. Where are the pills? Pills. I think it's instead of navs. Pills. Oh, there they are. Okay, so pills, again, it uses exactly the same content where you have a parent UL and then you have several child line items. And so you can grab this as a starting code, right? And then just apply it underneath underneath these tab. You can add now the pills, right? So let's re-render. Perhaps we want to add some break in between these two, right? And underneath you would have the widgets. The widgets, we're gonna move them to a later assignment. I think it's too much to to achieve in just 1 week. So we're gonna move the widgets to, I think it's assignment 3. I forget. Obviously, look at the content that is being asked to for you to implement in your in the particular assignment to know what the actual tabs and the actual pills to use. Another content that you're being asked to implement as well is the landing page, where you have all sorts of tables, right? Where you have different columns and you have different content in there. So let's take a look at that next.
Hi everyone, Jose here. Please remember to subscribe and like the video. And if you have any questions, please leave a comment down below. Thank you.